Commander limped into the Grand Council chamber, his three remaining limbs carrying him with difficulty across the polished crystalline floor. The scars that crisscrossed his chitinous blue skin told stories of battles fought in distant star systems, but none of the assembled delegates seemed to notice or care. The Galactic Council was in session, and today they would discuss the species to achieve faster-than-light travel: humans. The chamber buzzed with the typical arrogance of civilized species. Representatives from the Empire preened their golden feathers while discussing trade agreements. The silicon based on delegation clicked and whistled about mining rights in newly discovered systems. Everyone seemed confident that this meeting would be just another routine first contact protocol. Knew better. He had fought alongside humans during the border wars, watched them turn impossible situations into victories through sheer determination and creativity that all military doctrine. While other species planned for months before making tactical decisions, humans adapted in seconds. Where others saw defeat, humans saw opportunity. "The floor recognizes Commander of the Military Corps," announced the council speaker, her voice echoing through the chamber's acoustic systems. The massive alien resembled a floating jellyfish, her translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that indicated formal protocol mode. Approached the speaking platform, his artificial leg whirring softly with each step. The replacement limb was human-designed, crafted from materials that shouldn't have been able to support his weight, but somehow did. It was typical human engineering, breaking established scientific principles through stubborn refusal to accept limitations. "Honored Council," began, his voice carrying the gravelly tone common to his species. "I come before you today not as a representative of my government, but as someone who has witnessed humanity in combat. I urge extreme caution in our approach to this species." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. The representative, Ambassador Oss, ruffled his golden plumage dismissively. "Commander, we appreciate your military service, but first contact protocols are a diplomatic matter. These humans have barely achieved basic FTL capability. Their technology is centuries behind our most primitive member species. Their largest weapons barely qualify as planet crackers," added the on-delegate, her crystalline voice tinkling like broken glass. "Our preliminary scans show they still use primitive chemical propulsion for most of their spacefaring vessels. They are clearly not a threat to galactic stability." His mandibles clicked in frustration. They were looking at all the wrong things, measuring humanity by standards that simply didn't apply. "Council members, you're focusing on their technology and missing what makes them truly dangerous. It's not their weapons or their ships, it's how they think." The chamber fell into polite silence, the kind reserved for indulging a veteran's war stories before moving on to more important matters. Pressed on, knowing this might be his only chance to warn them. 3 years ago, I was commanding a joint task force in the sector. Our mission was to hold a strategic against Devourer's raiders while civilian evacuation fleets escaped through the standard military doctrine called for a defensive position using the asteroid field as cover. He paused, remembering the chaos of that day. Space filled with weapons fire, ships dying in brilliant flashes, the constant stream of emergency communications from overwhelmed commanders. The human contingent was small, just 2 destroyers and a light cruiser under the command of Captain Sarah. When I explained our defensive strategy, she listened politely, then asked a question that should have been irrelevant. "How fast can those evacuation ships actually move if we remove the safety protocols?" Ambassador Oss preened impatiently. "Commander, while we appreciate historical context, perhaps we could focus on relevant information about human capabilities and intentions." "This is relevant," insisted, his voice rising. "You see, every species in the galaxy accepts certain limitations. When our engineers design evacuation procedures, they build in safety margins. When we calculate tactical options, we stay within established parameters. Humans don't do that." The council speaker's bioluminescent patterns shifted to indicate mild interest. "Please continue, Commander. What specifically did this captain propose?" She suggested we abandon the defensive position entirely. Instead of using the asteroid field as cover, she wanted to use it as ammunition. Her plan was to rig the largest asteroids with makeshift engines and gravity bombs, then launch them directly at the Devourer fleet while pushing the evacuation ships beyond their design specifications. Murmurs of skepticism filled the chamber. The ambassador laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Commander, such a plan would be suicide. The evacuation ships would suffer catastrophic system failures, and using asteroids as weapons would require precise calculations that no organic mind could perform in combat conditions." "That's exactly what I told her," replied. Captain smiled at me and said, "Then it's good we don't plan to survive this, and even better that we're too stupid to know it's impossible." The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. The concept of deliberately planning for failure was so alien to galactic military thinking that most species lacked words for it in their tactical vocabularies. The human destroyers moved into the asteroid field and began attaching improvised thruster packages to the largest rocks they could find. Meanwhile, Captain contacted the evacuation fleet commanders and convinced them to disable their safety systems. She told them that their ships might not survive, but their cargo would reach the artificial leg locked into position as he shifted his weight, the human-designed servos adapting automatically to his movement. The Devourers arrived expecting a standard defensive engagement. What they got was something that violated every principle of space combat. He gestured toward the chamber's holographic display system, and star charts appeared showing the sector. The humans had turned dozens of asteroids into guided missiles, each one programmed to adjust course based on target movement. When the Devourer fleet tried to maneuver around them, the rocks followed. When they tried to destroy them, the explosions created debris fields that made navigation impossible. The display zoomed in on the battle site, showing the chaotic swirl of destroyed ships and scattered debris. But the real genius was what Captain did with the evacuation fleet. Instead of trying to protect them, she used them as bait. The Devourers concentrated their fire on what they thought were vulnerable civilian ships, not realizing those ships were now flying beyond their structural limits and could reach in a fraction of the expected time. Ambassador Oss shifted uncomfortably on his perch. "Commander, you're describing tactics that border on reckless endangerment. No civilized species would risk civilian lives in such a manner." "And that's exactly why it worked," said, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "The Devourers are savage, but they're not stupid. They understand civilized military doctrine because they've been fighting against it for centuries. They know how we think, how we plan, what our limitations are. They had no idea how to respond to an enemy that ignored those limitations entirely." The council speaker's patterns shifted to indicate deep consideration. "What were the casualties, Commander?" "Lighter than any conventional defensive action would have produced. 3 evacuation ships suffered critical system failures, but their cargo pods were recovered by other vessels. The human light cruiser was destroyed, but not before Captain personally piloted it into the largest Devourer battleship. The entire enemy fleet was eliminated or driven off." A long silence filled the chamber as the implications sank in. Finally, the on-delegate spoke, her crystalline voice unusually subdued. "Commander, are you suggesting that humans are naturally suited for warfare?" His mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "No, delegate. I'm suggesting that humans don't distinguish between warfare and any other problem that needs solving. They approach everything with the same combination of creativity, stubbornness, and complete disregard for conventional wisdom." He activated another section of the holographic display, showing technical readouts of human technology. "Look at their spacecraft design. Instead of building ships according to established engineering principles, they build them to be modified. Their vessels are deliberately incomplete, designed to be upgraded and altered by their crews during missions." The display showed cutaway views of human ships, revealing modular construction that seemed chaotic compared to the elegant, fixed designs used by other species. "Their FTL drives shouldn't work according to our understanding of physics, but they do because humans refuse to accept that certain things are impossible. They build machines that require constant maintenance and adjustment, then they put crews aboard who consider that maintenance part of the adventure." Ambassador Oss ruffled his feathers nervously. "Commander, you paint a picture of a species that operates outside rational parameters. Surely their own government maintains some form of control over these tendencies." "That's the most terrifying part," replied. "There is no single human government. They have dozens of nation-states, corporate entities, and independent colonies, all operating with different objectives and methodologies. Some are peaceful traders, others are military expansionists, and some seem to exist purely for the sake of exploration and discovery." The chamber buzzed with alarmed discussion. The concept of a space-faring species without unified government was nearly incomprehensible to most council members. During my time with the Joint Task Force, I observed human decision-making processes firsthand. They don't rely on consensus or careful deliberation. Individual humans are authorized to make decisions that would require committee approval in our societies. Captain didn't need to consult with her superiors before implementing her asteroid strategy. She made the choice in real time based on battlefield conditions. Paused, remembering the controlled chaos of the human command structure. They call it initiative, and they train their personnel to exercise it constantly. Every human soldier is expected to think like a commander when circumstances require it. Every human commander is expected to fight like a soldier when necessary. The council speaker's patterns shifted to indicate concern. Commander, what exactly are you recommending? Are you suggesting we treat humanity as a threat to galactic peace? I'm suggesting we treat them as what they are, a species that doesn't follow the rules because they don't believe in rules, replied. They're not malicious, but they're unpredictable in ways that our standard diplomatic protocols can't account for. He gestured toward his artificial leg again. After the battle, I was injured by debris from the destroyed Devourer ship. The human medical officer who treated me couldn't use standard galactic medical equipment on my physiology, so she improvised. She used spare parts from a communications array to build a neural interface that would let a human prosthetic respond to my nervous system. The chamber fell silent as delegates contemplated the implications. Cross-species medical compatibility was considered impossible without years of research and careful genetic modeling. When I asked her how she knew the interface would work, she said she didn't. She admitted that she was guessing based on similarities between human and neural structures. She told me that if it didn't work, we'd try something else until we found something that did. Ambassador Oss spoke carefully, his voice lacking its earlier dismissiveness. Commander, are you saying that humans routinely attempt procedures without certainty of success? I'm saying that humans don't require certainty to act. They're comfortable with uncertainty in ways that would paralyze other species. They see failure not as an ending, but as information to be used in the next attempt. Moved closer to the central platform, his artificial leg adapting smoothly to the change in surface angle. Council members, when we invite humanity to join the galactic community, we're not just adding another species to our databases. We're introducing a fundamental challenge to how we understand intelligence, technology, and civilization itself. The holographic display shifted to show human population centers on Earth and their growing number of off-world colonies. Unlike other species settlements, which followed careful urban planning principles, human colonies looked almost organic in their growth patterns, expanding and adapting based on local conditions rather than predetermined blueprints. They don't just live in their environments, continued. They reshape them, constantly and without asking permission from anyone. Their industrial processes produce materials that shouldn't exist according to our periodic tables. Their artistic expressions influence their technological development in ways that blur the line between creativity and engineering. The on-delegate's crystalline form chimed softly, indicating deep thought. Commander, you describe humans as if they operate outside natural law. Surely there must be some governing principles that explain their behavior. There is one principle that seems to guide everything they do, replied. They believe that any problem can be solved if you're willing to try enough different solutions. They don't accept that some things are impossible. They just assume they haven't found the right approach yet. He activated a final section of the display, showing human research facilities scattered across multiple star systems. They're already working on technologies that we consider theoretical impossibilities: time manipulation, consciousness transfer, artificial reality generation. Not because they need these things, but because they're curious about whether they can be done. The council speaker's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what might have been anxiety. Commander, your testimony has been illuminating. What specific recommendations do you have for the council's consideration? Straightened to his full height, knowing that his next words might be the most important he ever spoke. Honored Council, I recommend that we approach humanity not as potential subjects or allies, but as an entirely new category of intelligence. They're going to change the galaxy whether we invite them or not. The question is whether we want to be part of that change or caught off guard by it. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates debated the implications of treating a newly space-faring species as an equal rather than a junior member of galactic civilization, but could see in their reactions that they still didn't truly understand what they were dealing with. They thought humans were just another aggressive species that could be managed through careful diplomacy and superior technology. They couldn't comprehend a species that might choose to be friendly not because they had to, but because they wanted to, and who might stop being friendly not out of malice, but simply because they'd gotten bored with the current arrangement and wanted to try something new. As the debate raged around him, Commander limped back to his seat, his human-designed leg carrying him smoothly across the chamber floor. Soon, very soon, the Council would learn what he already knew, that humans didn't just break rules, they broke the very concept of rules, and they did it with a smile that could be either friendly or terrifying, depending on which side of it you found yourself. 6 months after Commander's warning, the Galactic Council's first contact team approached the Sol system with confidence born of 10,000 years of successful diplomacy. Ambassador Os led the delegation aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony of Spheres, convinced that standard protocols would easily manage these primitive humans. The ship's massive bulk drifted through the outer solar system, its crystalline hull reflecting starlight in patterns designed to appear non-threatening to developing civilizations. "Preliminary scans confirm what our intelligence suggested," reported Science Officer Ash, her tentacles dancing across the sensor controls. "The humans have achieved basic fusion propulsion and simple gravity manipulation, but their largest vessels barely qualify as system defense ships. Their technology level places them roughly 3,000 years behind standard galactic membership requirements." Ambassador Os preened his golden feathers with satisfaction. Despite dramatic warnings, the evidence spoke for itself. Humanity was clearly just another young species in need of guidance and gradual integration into civilized society. "Any signs of aggressive intent?" asked Captain from the ship's command center. The massive shell gleamed under the bridge lighting, each segment inscribed with diplomatic achievements from previous first contact missions. "None detected," Ash replied. "They're maintaining standard civilian traffic patterns throughout their system. No military vessels have altered course toward our position. Most intriguingly, they seem to be conducting some kind of massive construction project near their fourth planet." The main display showed Mars' orbit filled with scaffolding and partially completed structures that easy categorization. Whatever the humans were building was enormous and completely unlike any industrial project in the galactic databases. "Probably early-stage space industrialization," Captain noted dismissively. "Young species always start with inefficient mega-projects before learning proper resource management. We'll add it to the list of areas where they'll need guidance." Ambassador Os activated the ship's communication array, preparing to deliver the standard first contact greeting. The message had been refined over to be reassuring while establishing the Council's benevolent authority. It explained the galactic community's peaceful intentions and invited the new species to consider the benefits of membership under proper supervision. The response came faster than expected, almost before the transmission could have reached Earth and been properly decoded by primitive human communication systems. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Sarah of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We're pleased to make contact with representatives of galactic civilization. However, we notice your ship has entered our system without requesting permission from system traffic control. Please adjust course to coordinates we're transmitting and prepare to be escorted to the appropriate diplomatic facilities." The bridge fell silent. In 10,000 years of first contact procedures, no newly discovered species had ever presumed to give directions to a Council diplomatic mission. "Did they just tell us where to go?" Ash asked, her tentacles frozen over the control surfaces. "More concerning," Captain rumbled. "How did they respond so quickly? Our message should have taken at least 47 minutes to reach there and return." Ambassador Os ruffled his feathers nervously. "Perhaps they have better communication technology than our scans indicated. No matter. We'll politely explain proper diplomatic protocols." He began composing a carefully worded response explaining the Council's authority and the standard procedures for first contact with developing civilizations. Before he could transmit it, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. "Multiple contacts approaching at high velocity," reported the tactical officer. Vector analysis suggests they launched from concealed positions throughout the system before our arrival. The display showed a dozen human vessels converging on their position from impossible angles. The ships were smaller than expected, but moving faster than should have been possible with primitive human propulsion technology. "How fast are they traveling?" Captain demanded. "Approximately 12% of light speed," the tactical officer replied, his voice tight with confusion. "Sir, that's faster than our own escort fighters, and they're maintaining perfect formation while executing vector changes that should tear their ships apart." Admiral's voice crackled across the communications channel again. "Council vessel, you're now being escorted by Squadron Gamma of the Colonial Defense Force. Please maintain your current heading and follow the navigation beacons we're providing. Any deviation from the prescribed course will be considered hostile action." Ambassador Oss felt his carefully planned first contact scenario crumbling around him. "Admiral, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. We're here under the authority of the Galactic Council to welcome humanity into the interstellar community. We don't require escorts or permission to—" "Ambassador," Admiral interrupted, "with respect, you're in human space now. Our space, our rules. You want to talk diplomacy? Great, we love talking. But you'll do it from the diplomatic station we've prepared for exactly this kind of meeting, not from a warship that just wandered into our backyard without so much as a courtesy call." "Warship?" Captain spluttered. "The harmony of spheres is clearly marked as a diplomatic vessel. Our configuration and energy signatures are universally recognized as non-combative." There was a pause before Admiral responded, and when she did, there was amusement in her voice. "Captain, any ship that can crack a planet is a warship, regardless of what you call it or how pretty you make it. The fact that your diplomatic vessel carries enough firepower to sterilize a biosphere kind of undermines the whole 'we come in peace' message." The human escort ships had closed to within comfortable weapons range, though their own armament appeared minimal by galactic standards. What made the Council crew nervous wasn't their weapons, but their behavior. The human pilots were flying in formations that constantly shifted, creating overlapping fields of fire while maintaining perfect coordination without any detectable communications between ships. "How are they coordinating their movements?" Ash whispered. "I'm not detecting any tactical communication channels." "Maybe they're using some kind of quantum entanglement communication system," suggested the tactical officer. Admiral's voice cut through their speculation. "Oh, you're wondering how we fly together without chattering on the radio? Practice. Lots and lots of practice. Humans have been flying in formation since before we had radios. We just adapted old techniques to new environments." The casual mention that they'd been monitoring the Council's internal communications sent a chill through the bridge crew. Human technology might appear primitive, but their intelligence-gathering capabilities were clearly more sophisticated than anyone had realized. "Admiral," Ambassador Oss said carefully, "we're prepared to follow your suggested course. However, I must note that the Galactic Council has established protocols for first contact situations that—" "Ambassador, let me stop you right there," Admiral said. "We know about your protocols. We've been monitoring galactic communications for about 18 months now. We're familiar with how you usually handle first contact with primitive species. The problem is, we're not particularly interested in being junior members of your club." The escort formation shifted smoothly around the Council ship, guiding it toward the massive construction project near Mars. As they drew closer, the true scale of the human achievement became apparent. "By the Seven Suns," breathed Captain, "what is that thing?" The structure was a ring, but calling it a space station would be like calling a planet a large rock. The ring was large enough to encompass a small moon, its surface studded with what appeared to be docking facilities, manufacturing centers, and residential areas. Ships moved constantly through its interior space, following traffic patterns that managed hundreds of vessels simultaneously without apparent central control. "Welcome to Haven Station," Admiral announced. "Our first attempt at serious space architecture. It's not much to look at yet, but it'll do for our purposes." "Not much to look at?" Ash stammered. "Admiral, this structure represents more advanced engineering than species typically achieve until they've been space-faring for several centuries. How did you complete such a project so quickly?" "Oh, that's easy," Admiral replied cheerfully. "We cheated. Instead of trying to build the whole thing at once, we built it in sections using materials from the asteroid belt. Each section was designed to be self-sufficient and expandable, so we could keep adding pieces as we figured out what we actually needed. The human approach to construction violated every principle of proper engineering that the Council taught developing species. Responsible civilizations planned such projects carefully, conducting decades of research before beginning construction. Humans appeared to have started building before they fully understood what they were building. Admiral, surely you must have encountered significant technical challenges during construction, Ambassador Oss said. How did you overcome problems with structural integrity and resource allocation? Same way we overcome every other problem, Admiral laughed. We tried things until something worked, then we tried to figure out why it worked so we could do it better next time. Turns out, a lot of engineering problems that look impossible on paper become manageable when you're actually working with your hands. As they approached the docking facilities, the Council crew got their first good look at human space infrastructure. Nothing looked like it belonged together, yet everything functioned seamlessly. Ships designed with completely different aesthetic principles shared docking ports. Manufacturing facilities that should have been incompatible were connected by improvised transfer systems that somehow worked perfectly. This is impossible, muttered the tactical officer. Nothing here follows standard design principles. How does any of it work? Because humans don't believe in standard design principles, Admiral said, apparently monitoring their conversations with disturbing ease. We believe in making things work, then figuring out the principles afterward. It drives our engineers crazy, but it gets results. The docking procedure itself was a revelation. Instead of following carefully programmed approach vectors, the human traffic controllers simply talked the harmony of spheres into position using real-time guidance and visual confirmation. The massive Council ship was birthed with casual efficiency that suggested the humans treated the maneuver as routine despite its complexity. Diplomatic representatives can disembark at Airlock 7, Admiral announced. We've prepared suitable accommodations for your physiological requirements, though you might find our hospitality a bit different from what you're used to. Ambassador Oss found himself oddly nervous as he prepared to meet humanity's diplomatic team. Every aspect of this first contact had violated established protocols, yet the humans had managed each deviation with confident competence that suggested careful planning rather than chaotic improvisation. The airlock opened to reveal a human welcoming committee that immediately challenged every assumption about primitive species. Instead of being awed by their first contact with advanced galactic civilization, the humans looked genuinely excited to meet new people. Their diplomatic representative, a woman who introduced herself as Secretary Martinez, greeted them with enthusiasm that seemed completely authentic. Ambassador Oss, we're so pleased you could make it. We've prepared a full presentation about human civilization and our intentions regarding galactic society. We think you'll find our perspective quite interesting. The conference room was a masterpiece of practical design that incorporated elements from dozens of different aesthetic traditions. Human, clearly, but influenced by architectural styles that suggested deep study of other species' preferences. The furniture adjusted automatically to accommodate different physiological requirements, and the environmental controls maintained perfect comfort for each delegation member simultaneously. Before we begin formal negotiations, Secretary Martinez said, Admiral wanted to address some concerns that we understand have been raised about human unpredictability and military capabilities. Admiral's image appeared on the room's display system, broadcast from the station's command center. She looked relaxed and friendly, but there was something in her eyes that reminded Ambassador Oss of Commander's warnings. Ambassador, we understand that one of your military advisors has expressed concerns about human behavior in combat situations. We want you to know that we take those concerns seriously, and we appreciate the warning he tried to give your council. Ambassador Oss felt a chill run down his spine. Admiral, how could you possibly know about? Commander, Admiral smiled, and the expression was both warm and slightly predatory. Oh, we've been in regular communication with the commander since the Battle of Sector. He's been enormously helpful in understanding galactic military doctrine and diplomatic expectations. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just been monitoring galactic communications. They'd been conducting their own diplomatic outreach, establishing relationships with individual council members, and gathering intelligence about galactic society for over a year. "We want to be very clear about something," Admiral continued. "Commander was absolutely right to warn your council about us. We are unpredictable by galactic standards. We do ignore conventional limitations. We do solve problems in ways that other species consider impossible or insane." She leaned forward slightly, and her smile became more pronounced. "What the commander may not have fully explained is that we do all of this on purpose. We're not chaotic because we don't understand order. We're chaotic because we understand that order is just one tool among many, and we prefer to keep our options open." Secretary Martinez activated a holographic display showing the current state of human space. It wasn't just the Sol system anymore. Human colonies, research stations, and industrial facilities were scattered across nearly 24 star systems, connected by shipping routes that ignored the established galactic navigation channels. "Over the past 18 months, while we've been monitoring your communications and learning about galactic society, we've also been expanding," Secretary Martinez explained. "We now have permanent installations in systems that your maps indicate are uninhabited, unprofitable, or impossible to colonize." The display zoomed in on several systems, showing thriving human settlements in environments that should have been utterly hostile to carbon-based life. Stations orbiting binary pulsars, mining operations in the coronas of unstable stars, agricultural facilities in the void between galaxies. "How," whispered Ash, "these environments should be instantly lethal to organic life." "They are," Admiral agreed cheerfully. "That's what makes them interesting. Turns out when you can't rely on natural habitability, you get really good at creating artificial habitability. And when you get good at that, you can live pretty much anywhere you want." Ambassador Oss struggled to process the information. Humanity had achieved in 18 months what most species required centuries to accomplish, and they'd done it in regions of space that the galactic community had written off as uninhabitable wastelands. "Admiral Secretary Martinez," he said carefully, "what exactly is humanity's position regarding membership in the galactic community?" Secretary Martinez and Admiral exchanged a look that somehow conveyed volumes of information in a split second. It was the kind of wordless communication that indicated either telepathic ability or such deep familiarity that conscious communication was unnecessary. "We'd love to join the galactic community," Secretary Martinez said, "but not as junior members waiting to be gradually introduced to advanced technology and civilized behavior. We want to join as equals, with full voting rights, territorial sovereignty, and the freedom to continue developing along our own chosen path." That's not how the integration process works," Ambassador Oss stammered. "New species require guidance and oversight to ensure they don't disrupt galactic stability. There are protocols, procedures, established methods." "Ambassador," Admiral interrupted gently, "we're not rejecting your protocols because we don't understand them. We're rejecting them because we understand them perfectly and we don't like what they represent." The holographic display shifted to show the standard council integration process. Centuries of gradual technological introduction, careful cultural modification, and systematic replacement of indigenous development with approved galactic standards. "You turn every species into a variation of yourselves," Secretary Martinez explained. "You eliminate the traits and tendencies that make each species unique in favor of standardized behavior that fits your existing social structures. It's very efficient, but it's also incredibly wasteful." "Wasteful?" Captain rumbled. "The integration process ensures peaceful coexistence and optimal resource utilization across thousands of species." "It ensures conformity," Admiral corrected. "But conformity isn't the same thing as optimization. You've created a galactic society that's stable and predictable, but you've also created a society that can't adapt to genuinely new challenges because it's systematically eliminated the traits that produce novel solutions." The humans' analysis of galactic civilization was devastatingly accurate and deeply unsettling. They'd identified weaknesses in the Council's approach that none of the member species had ever questioned, probably because the integration process had trained them not to question it. "So what do you propose instead?" Ambassador Oss asked, though he wasn't entirely sure he wanted to hear the answer. Admiral's smile became positively radiant. We propose that you let us be ourselves while we help you remember how to be yourselves. We think the galaxy would be a much more interesting place if every species got to contribute their unique perspectives instead of being homogenized into galactic standard behavior. Secretary Martinez activated another section of the display, showing human research into recovered examples of pre-integration technology from various species. We've been studying the artifacts and historical records of species that joined the Council centuries ago. It's amazing what they were capable of before they were taught to think inside galactic standard parameters. The display showed architecture that physics, on artistic expressions that achieved impossible beauty, and military innovations that made current doctrine look primitive by comparison. All of it abandoned in favor of approved galactic methods. You're suggesting that the integration process has actually made us less capable? Ash asked, her tentacles curling with distress. We're suggesting that capability isn't the same as efficiency, Admiral replied. Your current methods work reliably within known parameters, but reliability within known parameters is exactly what you don't want when you encounter unknown parameters. As if summoned by the conversation, Commander's image appeared on another section of the display. The veteran looked better than he had during his council appearance, his bearing more confident and his artificial leg apparently giving him no trouble. Ambassador Oss said, I hope you'll forgive my irregular communication with human representatives, but after working with them during the border wars, I realized that they might be exactly what the galaxy needs. Commander, Ambassador Oss said weakly, your duty is to your species and the Council, not to. My duty is to the preservation of galactic civilization, interrupted. And I've come to believe that our current approach to civilization is slowly killing it. We've become so focused on preventing change that we've forgotten how to create positive change. The weight of revelation was crushing. Everything the Council had worked to build over was being challenged not by enemies or barbarians, but by a species that had studied their achievements and found them wanting. What exactly are you asking of us? Ambassador Oss whispered. Secretary Martinez stood and walked to the viewing port, gesturing toward the impossible structure of Haven Station and the organized chaos of human space traffic beyond. We're asking you to remember what it feels like to be surprised by your own capabilities, she said. We're asking you to consider that maybe, just maybe, the universe is stranger and more wonderful than your current models predict. And we're asking you to let us show you what's possible when you stop being afraid of the impossible. Admiral's image leaned forward on the display. But most importantly, Ambassador, we're asking you to make this decision quickly, because whether you decide to work with us or not, we're going to keep being ourselves, and the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place. The implications hung in the air like a challenge and a promise. Humanity wasn't asking for permission to exist. They were offering the galactic community a chance to exist alongside them. But the offer came with the clear understanding that it might not remain available indefinitely. Ambassador Oss returned to the council chambers with a mind full of impossible images and a growing certainty that the galaxy was about to change in ways that terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. The emergency session had been called within hours of his initial report, and every major species representative was present, their various forms creating a familiar tapestry of galactic civilization. But familiarity, Oss now realized, was exactly the problem. The ambassador will present his findings, announced the council speaker, her bioluminescent patterns indicating formal attention. Oss activated the holographic display system, showing images from Haven Station and the impossible scope of human expansion. The assembled delegates leaned forward with interest that quickly transformed into alarm as the implications became clear. In 18 months, Oss began, humanity has established permanent colonies in 27 star systems, constructed the largest artificial habitat ever recorded, and developed technologies that our science departments insist should not function. They have done this while maintaining constant surveillance of our communications and conducting independent diplomatic contact with our military personnel. Delegate of the Serpentine Republic raised one of her scaled heads. Ambassador, surely you're exaggerating. No species can achieve such expansion without centuries of preparation and massive resource allocation. Delegate, I wish I were exaggerating. Oss displayed the traffic patterns around Haven Station, showing hundreds of ships moving in complex formations without central coordination. The humans have redefined every assumption we make about development timelines and resource requirements. The on-delegate's crystalline form chimed with distress. How is this possible? Our initial scans clearly showed primitive technology and limited industrial capacity. Because we were looking for the wrong things, Oss admitted. We measured their technology against our standards instead of trying to understand what their technology was actually designed to accomplish. Commander's image appeared on the display, transmitted from his new position aboard a human research vessel. The veteran looked healthier than he had in years, his artificial leg apparently causing him no discomfort as he moved around what appeared to be a laboratory designed for multiple species. "Council members," said, "I'm speaking to you from the research ship Curiosity's End, where I'm working with human scientists to develop new approaches to battlefield medicine. In the past 6 months, we've made advances that exceed anything achieved by galactic medical science in the past century." The chamber erupted in shocked discussion. The concept of a council military officer openly collaborating within species was unprecedented and deeply disturbing to established order. "Commander," the council speaker pulsed sternly, "you were not authorized to engage in independent research cooperation. Your actions constitute a violation of first contact protocols." "Council speaker," replied calmly, "my actions constitute an attempt to prevent galactic civilization from stagnating into irrelevance. The humans offered to help me understand why their approach to problem-solving produces results that our methods can't match. I accepted because I believe the survival of everything we value depends on understanding what we've been doing wrong." The display showed the interior of the human research facility, revealing laboratories where multiple species worked together using equipment that shouldn't have been able to accommodate their different physiological requirements. Scientists worked alongside on researchers. Their different sensory capabilities combined to achieve understanding that no single species could reach alone. "The humans don't just study other species," continued. "They study how other species think, then they create environments where different thinking styles can work together instead of competing. It's not integration in the way we understand it. It's collaboration between equals who maintain their individual strengths." Delegate of the Aquatic Conclave spoke through her translation device, her voice bubbling with confusion. "Commander, you describe impossible cooperation. Species cannot simply work together without proper cultural adaptation protocols." "Delegate, that's exactly what I thought too," replied. "But the humans have developed something they call interface design. Instead of changing how people think, they create systems that allow different types of thinking to connect and enhance each other." The display zoomed in on a specific research project where human and scientists were developing new approaches to faster-than-light communication. The workspace was designed to accommodate each species' optimal working conditions simultaneously, creating an environment where feathered, scaled, and chitinous beings could work side by side without compromise. "The breakthrough came when we stopped trying to find one solution that worked for everyone and started looking for ways to let everyone contribute their best solutions," explained. "The result is communication technology that exceeds anything in our current databases." Ambassador Oss felt compelled to add his own observations. "Council members, the humans have achieved something that contradicts our fundamental understanding of how civilization develops. They've created rapid technological advancement without social stability, massive industrial growth without centralized control, and effective cooperation without cultural homogenization." The council speaker's patterns shifted to indicate deep concern. "Ambassador Oss, you describe a species that operates outside all known parameters for sustainable civilization. Such deviation from proven methods can only lead to chaos and eventual collapse." "That's what I thought too," Oss admitted. "But their society isn't chaotic. It's complex in ways that our models can't predict, but it's not random. They have principles that guide their behavior. Those principles are just completely different from ours." The holographic display showed human colonies throughout their expanding territory. Each settlement was unique, adapted to local conditions and the preferences of its inhabitants, yet all were connected by communication networks and trade relationships that functioned smoothly despite their diversity. "They don't believe in preventing problems," Oss continued. They believe in developing the capability to solve problems as they arise. Instead of creating stable systems, they create adaptable systems. Instead of avoiding risk, they develop resilience. Admiral's image appeared on the display, speaking from the bridge of a ship that seemed to be traveling through space that looked fundamentally wrong. The stars outside the viewports were too close together, and space itself seemed to ripple with energy patterns that shouldn't exist. "Council members," Admiral said cheerfully, "we're currently conducting experiments in dimensional engineering in a region of space that your maps indicate is uninhabitable. We're trying to determine whether it's possible to create stable wormholes by convincing spacetime that it wants to fold in specific ways." The casual mention of dimensional manipulation sent shock waves through the chamber. Such technology was considered theoretical even by the most advanced species, and certainly far beyond the capabilities of a newly space-faring civilization. "Admiral," the council speaker pulsed with alarm, "dimensional manipulation carries extreme risks to local spacetime stability. Such experiments require approval from the Galactic Science Council and implementation only under carefully controlled conditions." "Council Speaker, we appreciate your concern," Admiral replied, "but we're conducting these experiments in regions where spacetime is already unstable. If we break something that's already broken, we might actually fix it. And if we don't, we'll have learned something valuable about the limits of dimensional engineering." The human approach to dangerous research was everything the galactic community had spent learning to avoid. Humans seemed to actively seek out risky situations, not because they enjoyed danger, but because they viewed risk as a source of information that couldn't be obtained through safe methods. "This is madness," whispered Delegate of the Hive Collective. "No rational species would deliberately experiment with forces that could destroy star systems." "Delegate," Admiral said, apparently monitoring their conversation despite being in a different region of space, "we're not experimenting blindly. We've spent months modeling the potential outcomes and developing contingency plans for each scenario we can imagine. We just don't let the possibility of failure prevent us from attempting success." Commander's image reappeared on the display. "Council members, I've observed human risk assessment procedures firsthand. They don't ignore dangers. They categorize risks into manageable and unmanageable types. Then they develop strategies for converting unmanageable risks into manageable ones." The display showed human emergency response protocols, revealing disaster preparation that was both comprehensive and flexible. Instead of planning for specific emergencies, humans seemed to plan for the general concept of unexpected catastrophic events, developing response capabilities that could adapt to whatever actually happened. "They assume that their plans will be inadequate," continued, "so they create plans that can be modified in real time based on actual conditions. It's the difference between trying to predict the future and trying to influence it." Secretary Martinez's image joined the transmission from a location that appeared to be a diplomatic conference involving representatives from dozens of previously unknown species. The backdrop showed beings that didn't match anything in the galactic databases, creatures that seemed to have developed along completely different evolutionary paths. "Council members," Secretary Martinez said, "we've been contacted by several species that your previous surveys missed. They've been observing galactic civilization for centuries, but they've chosen not to make contact because they weren't interested in cultural integration. They're quite interested in collaboration without assimilation, however." The implications were staggering. Humanity had made contact with intelligent species that the galactic community hadn't even known existed, species that had remained hidden specifically to avoid the integration process that the Council considered beneficial. "How many species?" asked the Council speaker, her patterns betraying deep anxiety. "So far, 47, Secretary Martinez replied casually. "Though species might not be the right word for some of them. A few are collective intelligences, a couple appear to be artificial consciousnesses that developed independently, and one seems to be a living planet that achieved sentience through geological processes." The chamber fell into stunned silence as delegates tried to process the revelation that the known galaxy contained far more intelligent life than anyone had realized, and that much of that life had been actively avoiding contact with galactic civilization. "Secretary Martinez," Ambassador Oss asked weakly, "what do these species want?" "The same thing we want," Secretary Martinez replied. The freedom to develop according to their own nature while participating in a larger community of minds. They're interested in sharing knowledge and resources, but not in becoming standardized versions of each other. Admiral's transmission rejoined the conference call, her ship apparently having completed its dimensional experiments. We've achieved stable wormhole formation, she announced matter-of-factly. The technique is completely different from standard galactic FTL methods, but it seems to work reliably. We'll be happy to share the technology with anyone interested in experimenting with alternative approaches to space-time manipulation. The casual offer to share revolutionary technology that the humans had just invented violated every principle of controlled technological development that guided galactic civilization. Advanced technologies were supposed to be carefully evaluated, tested extensively, and introduced gradually to prevent social disruption. Admiral, the council speaker pulsed desperately, such technology transfers require extensive review and approval processes. Unauthorized distribution of advanced capabilities could destabilize the entire galactic economy. Council Speaker, Admiral replied, we're not asking for permission to share our discoveries. We're informing you that we intend to share them. You can choose to participate in that sharing or not, but you can't prevent it from happening. The fundamental challenge was now clear. Humanity wasn't seeking integration into galactic civilization. They were creating an alternative to galactic civilization, one that attracted species that had been ignored or avoided by the traditional approach. Commander spoke again, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had fought to preserve galactic civilization for decades. Council members, we have a choice to make. We can continue to insist that our methods are the only correct approach to interstellar society, or we can admit that we might have something to learn from a species that achieves better results using completely different methods. Commander, the council speaker said, you're suggesting that we abandon 10 of proven social development in favor of untested human theories. Council speaker replied, I'm suggesting that our proven methods have proven themselves inadequate. We've created a stable, peaceful, predictable society that's incapable of solving new problems or adapting to unexpected challenges. The humans have shown us that stability and adaptability don't have to be mutually exclusive. The display showed a real-time comparison between standard galactic response protocols and human problem-solving approaches. When faced with identical challenges, galactic civilization followed established procedures that produced reliable but limited results. Humans ignored established procedures and achieved results that ranged from spectacular success to valuable failure, but never simple stagnation. The difference, continued, is that we try to prevent change while they try to direct change. We build systems that resist disruption while they build systems that benefit from disruption. We've optimized for survival while they've optimized for growth. Ambassador Oss found himself speaking before he realized he had decided to support the human position. Council members, I recommend that we accept humanity's proposal for collaborative membership rather than integration, not because I believe their methods are superior to ours, but because I believe our methods need competition to remain effective. The chamber erupted in debate as centuries of established policy were challenged by evidence that couldn't be ignored. Species that had never questioned the integration process were suddenly forced to consider whether that process had been serving their best interests. Secretary Martinez spoke over the chaos, her voice carrying a warmth that somehow made her words more unsettling rather than less. Council members, we want you to know that we respect everything you've accomplished. Galactic civilization is a magnificent achievement that has brought peace and prosperity to thousands of worlds. We're not trying to destroy that achievement. We're trying to help it grow. But growth requires change, Admiral added, and change requires accepting that current methods might not be optimal for future challenges. We think the galaxy is big enough for multiple approaches to civilization, and we think diversity of approach will make all of us stronger. The council speaker's patterns shifted through several configurations before settling on one that indicated reluctant acceptance of necessity. The council will consider humanity's proposal. However, we must insist on certain safeguards to prevent disruption of established relationships. Of course, Secretary Martinez agreed. We propose a trial period during which human colonies and galactic territories maintain separate governance while establishing trade and research relationships. If the collaboration proves beneficial to both parties, we can discuss closer integration. If it proves problematic, we can maintain respectful distance. It was a reasonable proposal that offered both opportunities and escape routes. But Ambassador Oss suspected that once the galactic community experienced human innovation and cooperation methods, the trial period would become permanent adoption. Commander's final transmission came from what appeared to be a massive construction project in deep space, where ships from dozens of species were working together to build something that easy categorization. "Council members," he said, "I've learned that humans don't just break rules, they break the assumption that rules are necessary for coordination. They've shown me that it's possible to achieve order through agreement rather than authority, progress through cooperation rather than control, and strength through diversity rather than uniformity." The veteran looked directly into the camera, his expression combining the authority of experience with the excitement of discovery. "The humans didn't warn me about themselves. They warned me about us. They showed me that we've been so focused on preventing the wrong things from happening that we've forgotten how to make the right things happen." As the transmission ended and the Council prepared to vote on humanity's proposal, Ambassador Oss reflected on the irony of the situation. Commander had tried to warn them about humanity's dangerous unpredictability. But the real danger wasn't that humans might disrupt galactic civilization. It was that they might show the galaxy how much better civilization could be. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but ultimately the evidence was overwhelming. Humanity would be granted collaborative membership rather than integration status, free to develop according to their own nature while sharing their discoveries with anyone interested in learning from them. As the session ended, and delegates began the complex process of renegotiating thousands of years of established policy, Ambassador Oss found himself looking forward to a future that was impossible to predict, but almost certainly more interesting than anything the galaxy had experienced before. The humans had been right about one thing: the universe was stranger and more wonderful than galactic models had predicted. And now, thanks to their influence, galactic civilization might finally become strange and wonderful enough to match it.